All right. So this is the Paragon Advanced class. My name's Chris Peterson. I work at the MLS in Boise. So this morning we're going to look at creating an easy CMA and setting up the collab center for a buyer and for a seller. The handouts you've got there, you've got a handout that says creating an easy CMA, but it really has everything in there: CMA, the collab center, all that information. And then you've got the evaluation from the Real Estate Commission because there's 2 CE credits for this morning. And then there's also a printout of a property on Hillcrest Drive here in Twin that I'm going to use as my subject property this morning. So if you wanted to follow along, you can do that as well. Before we jump in and get going with Easy CMA, do you guys have any questions you want to make sure that we talk about this morning? All right. Well, as we go through this, if you have questions, definitely ask them because I don't know what you don't know. So Easy CMA is called that because it has a built-in comp engine that finds comparables for you. Now, the thing to remember with anything like that is it's going to work where there's property activity. So if you're trying to do an easy CMA, let's say, for example, in Hollister, it's not going to work very well. There's not a lot of property activity happening in Hollister. So it's going to work in Twin. It might work in Jerome. Ada and Canyon County it'll work in. But you can also run your own search and then import those comparables into Easy CMA. So you can put in your own criteria. And we'll look at both ways of doing that. Now, Easy CMA is based in Paragon Connect, so I'm in Paragon Connect here. But if you're in Paragon Classic, Paragon Pro, whatever you're calling it, under the CMA menu, when you go here to create an Easy CMA, you'll notice it takes me right into Paragon Connect to do that. And so that's the one thing. If you haven't started trying to use Paragon Connect on your computer, I would highly recommend it for a few reasons. First, eventually, this is where Paragon's going. They don't have a date yet, but this Paragon Classic, Paragon Pro, whatever we're calling it, is going to go away. And everything new is in Paragon Connect. And so it looks different, but it's really very similar. The searching is the same. It's laid out the same. Your contacts and saved searches are all there as well. Plus, Paragon Connect is the same on your phone as it is on your computer. So if you're out in the field and you're using Paragon Connect on your mobile device, it's going to be similar to what's in Paragon Connect on your computer, which also means if your phone isn't your friend and you'd rather use a mouse and a keyboard, you can learn Paragon Connect on your computer, and those same skills will transfer to your phone because it's the same program. It's not something different. All right, so I'm in Paragon Connect. To get to Easy CMA here, I just go to the menu on the left, and here's Easy CMA. Now, before we jump in and create an Easy CMA, we want to talk about the settings first, which in your handout is at the end of the Easy CMA stuff, but it's important to talk about them. So to go into the settings for Easy CMA, there's a little gear up here on the top right. And there aren't a lot of settings here, but there are some. The first one is adjustment defaults. What that lets you do is put in default values to use for adjustments. It isn't something that I hear being used a lot in our MLS, and that's just because things aren't the same. A 3-car garage in Twin isn't the same as a 3-car garage in Kimberly or a 3-car garage in Jerome. Same thing in Ada and Canyon County. A 3-car garage in Meridian isn't the same as a 3-car garage in Nampa. And so because of that, these values are going to vary based on where the property location is. And so if everything was the same, then you could use these. I mean, if for example, if a garage bay was always $8,000, no matter where it was, it would make sense to do this. And you want to remember that in a lot of parts of the country, it's not like here where we have new construction and existing homes all together. I mean, if you go buy a house in Orange County, California, they don't got a lot of brand new subdivisions going in. Those subdivisions were built 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so in those cases, a 3-car garage costs the same everywhere because those properties existed. And so just that's what the adjustment defaults would be, is you can put in that amount there. We'll talk about how adjustments work when we get into our CMA as well. The second item here is the comparable properties, and there's 2 items here: include public record comparables. Whether that's turned on or not, it's not going to do anything. Idaho is one of 13 non-disclosure states, so there's no public record comparables. In states that are disclosure states, it would include public record information with your listing data. The other item that says keep comp data live, and that I would recommend leaving on or turning on. What that means, it says automatically reflect changes to comp status and price. So that just means that if you pull a property in as a comparable and there's a change, the CMA will update that information when someone views it. Because the default way to share a CMA with the Easy CMA is as a link. So they'll open the link on their phone or on their email on their computer, And let's say you create a CMA this morning and there's a pending listing, but it closes tomorrow. When they click on that link tomorrow, it won't show pending anymore. It'll show closed. And so if you keep the comp data live, it just updates any changes to those properties. If you turn it off, then it's static and doesn't change. CMA introduction, that's like your cover letter. There's not one here by default. I actually, I think I copied and pasted the one that's the default one in Cloud CMA, but you can create your own. You can copy and paste it from somewhere else and put it in here. But that's the CMA introduction. And you have the ability on each individual CMA to change it, but here you can kind of make a default one. And then we've got the document library. This lets you upload documents that you can include in your CMAs. For example, I've got a moving checklist and a showing an open house checklist that I uploaded here. I got both those from Cloud CMA. But you can just click on the plus. They have to be a PDF file. Hit choose file, go find the one you want to use, and then you can upload it there. You also have the ability on each individual CMA to add them on the fly. But this lets you put things in there that you might want to use. Like maybe you have a net sheet from the title company that you want to be able to have in there or something. So that's the document library. And then the last one is you can provide feedback to the developers. People ask all the time if it's worth doing that. It's definitely worth doing it. And if you're asking for something that a lot of people are asking for, those changes happen. Now, if you're asking for something that you're the only one asking for it, probably not. But it's a great way to provide feedback on how the system's working to the developers that are creating and maintaining it. So I'm going to click on the back button here to get back to the front page here of EasyCMA. Now, last thing before we kind of walk through the process of creating an EasyCMA, when you create them, they're in this CMA section of Paragon Connect. And as you scroll down, they're all here. There's not a time period. In fact, if I keep scrolling down here, we can go all the way to my oldest one, which is all the way back from 2023, I believe. Yep, there's 2023 right there. And so you can see those CMAs you've created. And of course, if you want to remove one, you can click on the menu here and you can delete it. You click on the plus if you want to assign it to a contact. If it's already assigned to a contact, like I've got one up here that's assigned to a contact, clicking on that X will remove it from the contact. And we'll look at assigning it to a contact later on. It doesn't really do a lot other than associating it with their contact record. So then on their contact record, you would see it. Questions about anything before we jump in and kind of walk through the process? All right. So to create an EasyCMA, there's not a lot of steps to it. I'm going to click here on the plus, and then it's going to give me different ways to search for a property. So you can do an address search, use the MLS number, or manually enter address. The difference between the address search and manually entering an address is the address search is going to use Google to find the address. And so if it's new construction or something that may not come up on the map because it's so new, manually entering the address lets you do that. But we're going to use the address search here. And then you just start typing in the address, and then it should start finding it for you. So you'll notice I start typing in 2174 Hillcrest Drive, and there it is, which happens to be the address of our subject property. And so then it comes up and has you verify the location. I'm going to guess that's correct. If it was the wrong place, I can move it. But that way you're verifying the location, because the EasyCMA, when it uses the comp engine, uses proximity. So it tries to find things that are near it. So I'm going to confirm the location here. And then it's going to come up and it's going to give me information from public record data about the property. So the address, the city, the zip code, the property details. This property happens to be 4-bed, 2-bath, 1768 square feet. That's all what the listing says. Built in 1971 and 0.345 acres. Looks like that's correct. And then when I hit next, confirming the property details, then it's going to go in and load comparables for me. And it always does 10. When you do your own comparables, you can have up to 20, but it does 10. And it shows you the subject properties right here, and then it shows you the properties around it on the map. And you can click on the plus to zoom in or out. And then as you scroll down right below the map, you've got 3 buttons here. Edit comp order, manually enter comp, and generate new comps. So below, you've got the comparables that are here that it's selected. And so what edit comp order lets you do is it lets you go in and change the order. Like maybe I want to have my pendings up at the top of the list. Now there's not a way to, just click sort by status. You just have to manually move them. But I can move those pendings up to the top. And then when I hit save, you'll notice now my pendings are up here at the top. Manually enter comp lets you either use an address search or MLS number to add a property maybe that's not here. Maybe there's a comparable you're aware of that it didn't find. You can just add that in there. There's not a way to add something that wasn't on the MLS, though. It has to be on the MLS. And then we've got generate new comps. So maybe you're looking at the comps that it pulled up and you're wanting to kind of modify the comp engine, the way that it searched. People ask all the time, how did it search? Well, they don't really tell us exactly, other than we know that 6 months back is kind of what it goes with. But you could come here and you could change that date range. You could specify a number of bedrooms, a lot size, square footage, and bathrooms. The one thing that's not here that sometimes can be really useful is age. So there's not a way to eliminate new construction from your search or only find properties that are 30 years old versus 5 years old or whatever. And so that's one thing the comp engine can't do. So that's where running your own search can be more useful. But then you'd put your changes in here, generate new comps, and then it might generate any new comparables that it finds. And then when you're viewing the properties, when you're looking at the properties that are here, if you don't want to use a property, like my subject property is 1,700 square feet, this one is 1,500. If I didn't want to use it, I could hit remove. And then it puts it down here in this removed comp section. If I want to put it back, I just hit select, and now it's back up here with the rest of them. To do adjustments, you click adjustments and notes, and you can put any notes in here for adjustments you make. And then here you would come in and put in the dollar value you're adjusting for. Just like a lot of other CMA programs, you have to come up with the dollar amount you're making the adjustment for, and then you would enter it in here. So for example, this property has 1,500 square feet. Our subject property has 1,700 square feet. So if I was going to make an adjustment, I would need to do a positive adjustment here. So let's say the number I've come up with for the square footage difference is 5678. So when I save it, now you'll notice there's a plus 5678 there. And if I'd done a minus before it would be a negative adjustment. The trick with adjustments is you have to have a way to come up with that number. There's not a reference in the MLS. The Paragon doesn't have that information. So your broker, an appraiser, those are all good resources. What it's not taking price per square foot and timesing it by the difference, because that doesn't work. And then, of course, if I didn't want to use an adjustment, I could come here and I could remove it. And then the properties are in the order that I want. If I wanted to change them again, I can do that edit comp order to change them. But let's say I've got everything I want. It's in the order that I want. And then when I hit generate CMA, that's going to generate the CMA now. And what you're viewing is what will be viewed by the recipient, but you still can edit it. They won't be able to edit it. So the first thing is I can come here and change the picture. So maybe I've got a better photo than Google Street View. So I could come here and I could upload my photo if I wanted to do that. Then we've got the introduction or the cover letter. And I could go to edit introduction and I could edit it here if I wanted to. And as long as I don't check set as default, I'm only editing the one for this CMA. So maybe I have some blanks that I put on my default that I come here and put in the specifics for this property. So you could do that. And then we've got the suggested price. And this is just taking the price per square foot of the comparables, timesing it by the square footage of the subject to come up with that. But I can edit that information. So maybe I know that this subject property might have had some improvements that the comparables don't have. So I could come here and maybe I think my price should be $425 and my range should be $385 to $430. And so then when I save it, now that's what it's going to use instead of what it came up with. And then we have the property details. And again, I can hit edit property to go back and edit the information like we saw at the beginning. And then there's the map of the comparables. And then below are those individual comparables. And when you share it with someone, they can click on those to view the property just like you can. So here's the detail of that property. All the information's here. And then I just click on the X and I'm back on the list of properties. Also, there is a side-by-side view which shows you the subject property, and if you'd uploaded your own photo, it would be there instead of that blank. But then you can compare property to property here and just scroll through them that way. Then we've got the summary with the high value, low value, average sold price, average list price, the property statistics by status, the AVMs, the automated valuations, and easy value is from Paragon, from ICE. ICE is the company that owns Paragon, Intercontinental Exchange. RVM stands for Realtors Valuation Model. That comes from RPR. And both of these valuation tools include sold data. So unlike other websites like Redfin or Zillow or something that have valuations online that don't include sold data, these AVMs do. They have sold data. And then you've got your agent image, your contact information, your company logo all here that you can have. And then to share this, you just click on the little share icon right here. Now, if I was on my phone, I would also have the ability to text this, but I'm on my computer, so I can email it. So if I hit email CMA, I can come here, put in the person's email address. If the person is one of my contacts, their name will come up. I can change the subject. I can add a message if I want. Here is your CMA for your property on Hillcrest. And then when I send it, this is the email they get. There's your market analysis report. Here's your CMA for your property on Hillcrest. Now, before I hit View CMA, they can actually download the app. It's the Collab Center app. But even though they're a seller and it's a CMA, they could view that on the app. Then that also would let them search for properties and things like that. If they just want to view it, they just click on View CMA. And so you'll notice this looks very similar to what we just looked at, but I can't edit anything that's here. There's the picture, there's the introduction, the price, the properties, both the map and the details that are here. As well as the side-by-side view. And then the pricing summary, the statistics, the AVMs, and that information. Now, we got a statistic from Paragon a year or so ago that over 90% of the links that are shared from our MLS system are open on mobile devices. And if you think about the real world and the people that you see every day, what are they doing things on? They're not pulling out a computer most of the time and doing it. They're on their phone. So when you send this CMA to your seller, more than likely they're opening it on their phone. That's why that link is so useful, because the link is dynamic. So if I make this screen, let's make it a little smaller here. So let's say they're on their mobile device. This is what it looks like. So they can still go here, view the properties, click on a property to enlarge it and see the data. They can come here and zoom in or out on that. They can do the side-by-side view. Now, the side-by-side view is just one property at a time, because, of course, they're on a phone. But they can still see everything. And it's not a PDF they have to pinch and zoom to view. It's gonna be dynamic and fit on their phone. And so that's how that would work. And then, of course, they can view it on their computer as well. So if I go back here to the CMA, we just looked at sharing it. Now, what if I don't want to share it as a link and I want to create a PDF that I can print and put in a slipcover or whatever? So up here on the top right is print. And that's going to create the default, I think, is 6 pages, 6-page PDF of the CMA data. So if you want to create a PDF, you want to email it as an attachment, you want to print it out for someone, you can do that as well from here with an easy CMA. So hopefully it will load here. As it's loading, here we go. One thing you'll notice at the end is it doesn't have the AVMs. The RVM and the easy value from ICE aren't here. But here's the cover page, and it does use the Google Street View for that. Then here's the introduction with your contact information, the map of the comparables, the side-by-side with the subject property, and the first 5 subject property, and the next 5. And then we've got the summary data and the properties listed by status, and that's the last page. And so that's what the PDF would look like. Now, the PDF isn't saved anywhere in EasyCMA. So if you needed to generate it again, you would just need to come here and click on that print to PDF it again and create one. The other icons that are up here, the one just to the left of print is that documents. So we looked at the document library and the settings. So if I had a document I wanted to include, I could come here and either upload my own or select from the document library. So let's say I want to include the showing an open house checklist. So now that adds it as a document to the CMA. And now if I go here to print, we'll just print it again, it'll add that document as pages at the end of that CMA. So if you have your own documents, your brokerage has documents they want you to share with your clients, you could add those to the library, and then you can have them added at the end of your CMA to be included. And it would also be included if you shared it as a link. Works either way. Hopefully it doesn't take too much longer than it did before. So now this one's 7 pages long because I just added 1 page. So there's everything we saw before. There's the properties, there's the comparable data, and then we've got the showing an open house checklist. So it just adds it at the end, whatever you've got in there. So that is the documents. The other item here is assigning a contact, which we kind of talked about at the beginning a little bit. If I want to assign this to a contact, like maybe I want to assign this to David Adamson. So I select that and hit assign. What that does to the EasyCMA is it just puts create for David Adamson. But now if I were to look at my list of CMAs, it would have David Adamson's name on there. And if I went to his contact record, the CMA would be there too. And so we'll look at that here in a second. So if I go here to the CMAs, go to EasyCMA, here's the one on Hillcrest. There's David Adamson right there. And if I go to my contacts and I go to David Adamson, when I go here to EasyCMA, there's the Hillcrest CMA I just assigned to him. And so there it's both in the list of EasyCMAs and in the contact information. And then if I wanted to bring that CMA back up, I just click here on View CMA, and then it regenerates it for me. Questions about with the comp engine creating the CMA? Okay, so like I mentioned, a lot of times you're going to have properties that the comp engine is not going to find comparables for you, or it's not going to find good ones. And so it might be worthwhile to run your own search, which is what we'll do next here. And so from Paragon Connect, I'm just going to go here to the properties menu where the searching happens. I'm going to go here to residential. And then here you just put in the criteria that you need to be able to find those properties. So I'm going to just enter some criteria in here. There isn't a magic way to enter criteria. The thing to remember is Paragon is like any other computer program. Garbage in, garbage out. When people call and say, Paragon sucks, I can't find good comparables, the answer to that question is you don't have good criteria. Because Paragon is not Paragon's an inanimate object. It's not AI, it's not guessing. If you ask for sold properties but don't put a closing date in, you're going to get 20 years of sold data because that's what you asked for. So you just want to make sure that you're putting in the criteria that you want. So I'm going to come here to status, and I'm going to do all the actives, all the solds, and all the pendings. It doesn't mean I have to use actives as comparables, but I could. This property happens to be single family, so I'm going to choose single family. And then this property is 4-bed, 2-bath. So maybe on my beds, I'm going to do 3 to 5 beds. On my baths, 2 to 3 baths. It's 1768 square feet. So maybe I'll do 1,400 to 2,200. If I get too many, I can always narrow it down. Now, you'll notice the count's going to update here. And there's 159,000 still matching. Well, that's because I don't have any date information in there. So it's already looking at 20 years of sold data. and I haven't put any location information in, which I'm going to use the mapping for that. But you could use county or city, whatever you want. So I'm going to come here to closing date. Now I could enter dates myself, the actual dates, by using the calendar. But another easy way to do it, a quick way to do it, is if you go here to where it says advanced options, they have already preset dates here. So if I just want to go 6 months back, there's my 6 months back. And then it's giving me all ages of homes. This home happens to be 51 to 80 years. So if I come here to age, I'm going to choose 51 to 80. But I'm also going to choose 31 to 50 because then I kind of get a range around that property. Now, if I get too many, I can always change it. And I also could type in my own years built if I wanted, but I'm just going to use those two ages. And now I need to enter the location information. And I like using the mapping because that's going to let me find properties in a radius around the subject property instead of just using subdivision or zip code or something. And in Paragon Connect, I can just click here on the map icon, and that brings up the map right here. I could also run the search and go to the map view. It's the same thing. So the map comes up, and because I didn't put any location information, it's showing me everything in Idaho. But if I zoom, I'm going to zoom in here to the Magic Valley, because that's where my subject property is. I clicked on a listing, and so it brought it up here. So let's zoom in here to the Magic Valley. And so I want to put this map, I want to center it on my subject property. And so in Paragon Connect, the way to do that is over on the right, you'll notice there's a little magnifying glass. So if I click on that magnifying glass, I can type in the address. And this is one of the benefits of the mapping in Paragon Connect versus Paragon Classic is that it uses Google to find the address. Whereas in Paragon Classic, you have to make sure you type the whole address in, including city and state. So if I come here and I start typing in 2174 Hillcrest, you'll notice there's Hillcrest Drive, just like we saw before. And so it puts a little marker right where that property is. And then to do a radius, I just click on the radius icon to the right of where I enter the address, and then I choose my distance. So maybe I want to do 3/4 of a mile. So now when I hit apply, and I zoom out, get rid of that address there, I've got a radius of 3/4 of a mile. And if I go back here to my filter and make sure my criteria is everything that I want, and I hit apply, there's 20 listings that are within that map. Now, I don't have to use those 20 listings as comparables, but I'm already in the search results, so I can go right here to the views and go to my spreadsheet view, and then I can organize the properties the way that I want to be able to view them. And then I can select the ones that I want to be as my comparables. And just like a regular search, if I want to add a column to my spreadsheet, like maybe I want to have number of acres in here or something, I can always come up here, click on customize, and add the column that I want. For our purposes today, I'm going to sort by square footage. That is probably not the only way that I would do it if I was looking for comparables, but for this morning, I'm going to do that. And the reason I'm doing that is people ask all the time, especially newer agents, how can I get good at the MLS? How can I get good at doing things in the MLS? Well, the first answer is use it. Do searches. The more you search, the easier it gets. I mean, I don't know anybody who learned how to use a computer program that didn't use it. But in everything else, if you want to get good at shooting a rifle or a bow and arrow, you don't shoot bullets and arrows into the sky. You shoot at targets. Well, in the MLS, a target is a subject property. So if you have a subject property that's a recent sold or current active or pending, and you do a search for comparables, that subject property should also come up in your results. So if I look here, right here is the property on Hillcrest Drive. So that property showing up in my search results because it's a current active listing means that my criteria is valid. It means these properties are similar to that and they're near it. Now, of course, I wouldn't select that as a comparable, but I could come here and select the 4 properties that are smaller and the 4 properties that are larger. And these are all properties that are near the same age, near the same size, within 3/4 of a mile of the subject property. And if I want to view a property, I can click on the picture. That brings up the information. You'll notice the property is still checked here. I can click on the pictures to view them. I can even enlarge the pictures if I want. Scroll through them this way. And then I've got all the property details here, all the information about the property. And then if I want to add these to my EasyCMA, just right up here on the right, there's this More menu, and there's Add to CMA. And so in Paragon Connect, it's always going to add it to EasyCMA. Now, when I click on Add to CMA in Paragon Connect, I can create a new one, or I could add it to an existing one. Now, I'm going to add it to a new one, just like we're starting fresh. But really, if I wanted to add these comparables to my CMA I already did, I could do that. And it won't duplicate the listings. If the listing's already on there, it's not going to add it again. But it'll add the other ones and combine them. Yeah, because you can have up to 20. So the other one had 10. I only have 8 here. So even if none of these 8s were there before, I'd have 18 then. But my guess is that some of these are probably also from the one the comp engine pulled. They're not all going to be, but some of them are. But we'll just do a new one here. So then I hit next, and then we'll just walk through the same process. We'll do an address search. And so it is 2174 Hillcrest Drive. There's the location, and I confirm it. And then here are the property details. That's correct, and I hit next. But now it's pulling in my 8 comparables, which if I want to change the order, I could, but I shouldn't need to remove any because I picked these. And then when I hit generate CMA, now it's generating it based off those listings. So here I've got, again, the price information based off my comparables. And then I've got the property details there. There's the map view, the side-by-side view, and then all the property data there. And then if I want to share it, I can hit share and share that as an email. I can assign it to a contact. Let's say we're going to assign it to Thanos Big Meanie this time. And then now I've got that CMA based with my comps. So whether you're using your comparables or you're having the comp engine find them, it's really the same process. The difference is the data. And really, that's the hardest part of a CMA is finding those comparables. And while EasyCMA and RPR and Cloud CMA all have different ways to try to help you find those comparables, it's still ultimately your decision on what properties you're using. And you just want to make sure that you're picking the ones that you think are the most similar to the subject property. Questions about EasyCMA?
You assign it. You have to go back, and then you're going to do another one. And you pick somebody else. You have to erase it first.
Nope, you don't have to. I mean, so if I did a new one for this one, I could assign it to somebody else.
And send it both.
Nope. And it would be under each of their contact records, but it wouldn't send it to them. Yeah. Yep. So you could assign it to either one. So like if you had multiple property owners, you also could go in and open up a CMA and assign it to a separate person too. So you can do a second version of it and assign it to maybe you've got a partnership that owns properties. So you make one for one of them, one for the other, and they could both get their own. Yep, you do that too. Other questions with EasyCMA? Now, the last thing I'll say, which just comes up occasionally, so I'm not trying to forget to say it, is if you're not doing residential, EasyCMA is not going to work. It's not set up to work with vacant land or farm and ranch. And so in that scenario, you could use Cloud CMA or you could use the old CMA that Paragon Classic has. They may add it eventually in the future, but the thing with a lot of technology things, I mean, software is the same way. The percentage of residential agents that do things that aren't residential is really low. I mean, a kind of a similar example, back in the early 2000s, AT&T used to have ads on TV that said, we cover 99% of Americans. They had 0 native AT&T cell towers in Montana. So Montana was not part of that 99% of Americans because they didn't have any AT&T towers there. Now, that doesn't mean, like I said, that they won't ever add it eventually, but right now it's not there. So if you're trying to do farm and ranch, vacant land, just don't do EasyCMA. So there are other reports in Paragon, and so let's go back here to my search really quick. And I'm just going to go to my last 5 searches. Oh, nope. Let's go to residential. Hopefully my criteria is still here. Nope, that's not what I want. Well, we'll use this anyway. We'll just run the search I did earlier. So let's say you run a search and you find some comparables you want to use. So I'll go here to my spreadsheet. And then I'm just going to select some and then remove the others from my list. So let's say these are the ones that I want. I can go up here to selected and choose show checked, so it only shows me those. And then I could go here to this report, and there's the CMA summary, and that breaks down the statuses. So there's my 3 actives, 4 solds, and 1 pending, and gives me the minimum, average, maximum for the beds, baths, price per square foot, list price per square foot, sold price per square foot information is there as well. So you can do that also. And then if I wanted to send these to Cloud CMA, I can go here to the More menu, third-party integrations, and then when the Cloud CMA option comes up, it would pull those in as my comparables into Cloud CMA. So I could export it in there if I wanted. So that is Easy CMA. So the second thing to talk about this morning, is the Collab Center. And so the Collab Center is a way to notify buyers about properties, sellers about what's happening with their listing. And so we'll look at both sides of the Collab Center for that. Before we jump in and talk about the setting up the Collab Center, we want to talk about what it is. So I have a fake person that I've set up in the Collab Center, and so I'm going into the Collab Center already, but we'll look at setting it up here in a few minutes, but I already got it set up here. The reason I wanted to go here first is to show you what we're setting up. Because the thing with the Collab Center is it's not for you, it's for your clients. And there's always the urge to set it up first for myself to see what it looks like, which you can totally do, but you have to be a contact. You can't be an agent also. So you have to pretend you're a totally fake person and set it up. Whereas if you're just setting it up for someone, it's a little easier. So here's what the Collab Center looks like. And here it says, welcome Ken. This is for Ken Adams. And it shows them updates to their searches, how many current matches there are. Preserved listings are listings that they have marked as a favorite or a possible, but no longer match their search. People ask all the time, how does that happen? The listing goes sold or canceled or expired. If you're setting up a search for a buyer, they're looking for actives, not canceled, solds, and expireds. And so those preserved listings are ones that are no longer matching the search. And if I click here on the updates, it shows me how many have been updated since the last time they visited. They can come here and mark properties as favorite, possible, rejected. They can come here and leave a comment. This is nice. They also can come here and do their own property search. So they can bring up the map. And so here we are in Twin. They can come here and go to the filter. It's looking just for actives, and maybe their price is $475 to $680. Now when we hit apply, now we're seeing the listings that match those prices. They could come here and click on a listing that matches that they're looking for. They can mark this as a favorite, possible, or rejected. They can leave a comment. They can request a showing from their agent, not from the listing agent. And then they also have the ability on the Collab Center to do the near me search. So maybe they're out walking around through their neighborhood and there's a house down the road. Even though they may not be looking for properties there, they can click on that near me search and find properties near them and see what's going on with those, just like they could with some other consumer app. And then everything that they do on the Collab Center, you see in Paragon Connect. So if I go back here to the dashboard on Paragon Connect, here's Ken Adams, and it's showing me the activity in the last 7 days. And so Ken's marked 12 favorite, 11 possible, 11 rejected, left 7 comments, and created 1 search. If you click on the legend, it tells you what those colors mean. So if I want to see the comments he's left, I click on that number 12, and here's the filter showing me comments in the last 7 days. And so here's one that was left recently. I could come here. I can view that favorite. If I click on it, I'm viewing it. And of course, because I'm an agent, I see everything in here. People always ask, how do I know I'm seeing everything? Well, here are the remarks, and there's the agent remarks. Consumers aren't going to see that. So I can see everything there. And I didn't mean comment. I meant a new match. Yeah, I was going to go back here. The comments right here, number 7. Yeah. So the comments are in bold. So here's the comment. Literally, you saw me leave it 2 minutes ago. So I could come here. When do you want to see it? And then on the Collab Center, they would be notified that I'd responded. And if they have the Collab Center app, they could get a push notification that I responded. And if you've got Paragon Connect, the mobile app on your phone, bring mine up here so we can see it. First, you'll notice it looks the same. But right up here at the top, there's a little Paragon Connect icon. And here it tells me that Ken Adams left a comment. So I could tap on that and I could respond to it right from my phone, right from that activity that I'm getting in the app. So instead of having to go into Paragon, wait till I get the email, I can just do it right from my phone. And so just like you get a push notification, they can get push notifications. And so that's what the Collab Center is. So to set up the Collab Center, and we've had the Collab Center for a long time. It's always been the same way. You have to have a contact, and they have to have a search assigned to them. And so whether you do the search first or the contact first, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to add a contact first because that's the order your handout goes in, but it doesn't matter. The thing to remember is the contact is like in your phone. It's a contact record. The search is the criteria. The names of the searches don't matter. You might name the search after your person. You don't have to. But it's got to be a search assigned to them. So to add a contact, I'm just going to go here and go to contacts. And if I was on my phone, when I click on the plus, I'd also have an option to import them from my phone contact record. Since I'm on my computer, when I click on the plus, it's just going to have me enter their information. So let's say this contact record is for Fred Johnson, and first name, last name, and email are required. Fred Johnson 2027 at gmail.com. Now there's other information you can put in here. That's all that's required. So now when I hit save, I've saved that contact. And so here I am on their contact record. Searches are always under buyer activity. So I come here to buyer activity, and to add a search, I just click on the plus. And then it lets me choose what kind of search I'm going to do. I'm going to pick residential. And then I'm going to go in and put in the criteria that they want. So let's say they're obviously looking for active listings because they're a buyer. Let's say they only want single family because that's less than 1 acre. They've told me they want to live in a few different cities. Maybe they want to live in Twin. Maybe they also want to look at Gooding and Kimberly. And then maybe their price is $475 to $700. They've got to have at least 4 beds, at least 2.5 baths, and a minimum of 1,700 square feet, but a maximum of 2,600. So right now, my count already drops to 30 by entering that criteria. Now, they also have told me they don't want any new construction. So an easy way to get rid of new construction is to come here to age, and instead of checking everything that's not new construction, check the 3 that are new construction. So in this case, new, never occupied, to be built, and under construction, but change it on the advanced options to not equal to. So now I'm getting everything that is not equal to new construction, which drops me to 18. And if that's all they want, that's what they're looking for, then I just come here and hit the save button and give the search a name. You'll notice they're already here, and it's going to connect that search to them. So let's say this search is going to be Magic Valley, existing homes, Twin, Gooding, Kimberly. Now, I could put a special message in here if I want for them. They're already going to get a message telling them how the Collab Center works. I can come here to change the type of notifications, which you probably want them to get all the notification types. So you don't need to worry about changing that. But then you have the time frames. So by default, it's on immediately for them getting notified and for you being notified of what they do. So if they've said, I'm not ready to, I'm not in a hurry. I'm still maybe a year out from getting everything ready to get a loan. So maybe immediately is not what they need. So we could go here to recurring, and maybe they want to get it not every day, but maybe on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'll have it go to them at 4:30 in the afternoon. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4:30, it's going to run the search and send them an email. And then you can choose how often you're going to be notified. Again, if this person's a year out from buying a house, I probably don't need to know immediately when they mark a favorite. Now, if it was somebody who's going to buy a house in the next 3 months, that might be different. Since I don't need to know immediately, I could come here and choose a schedule for myself, or I could even turn it off. Maybe I want it on a schedule, but what I want it to be is weekly, and it's just going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:30 in the afternoon. Because maybe that's when I check my email I haven't gotten to and voicemails I haven't taken care of. And so now that just means if they do something on the Collab Center, if it's before Tuesday, I'll see it. If it's before Thursday, I'll see it. So in theory, this is how it could work. They could be on the Collab Center on Sunday, find a property, mark it as a favorite, leave a comment. I could be in Paragon Connect on Sunday on my phone, and I would see that. Tuesday, I would get the email. And so I've had plenty of people say, well, why do I need to get the email? Exactly. You choose who you need to get emails from. You don't need to get them for everybody. Because I worked at the MLS a long time, and I've still never had somebody say, man, Chris, I sure wish I could get more emails from Paragon. I don't get enough of them. We get the opposite. People complain all the time about getting too many emails. And so this is where you can change that. And the thing to remember is if you set up 10 contacts with 10 searches, and you want to edit the frequency of emails, you need to edit 10 contacts that have 10 searches. There isn't one switch because you didn't set it up with one switch. And so when you're setting it up initially, if you just think through, how often do I need to get this? You can do that. So maybe I think, maybe I don't need to get a notification right now because you can always come back later and change it. 9 months from now, when they're 3 months from making an offer, that might be the time to turn it on immediately. So now I've got it set up for Fred Johnson. I'm going to hit save, and that sends him that initial email and the link to the Collab Center. And if I go here to his contact record, so there's Fred Johnson. If I go here to the message history, this is the email he just got sent. It would have your company logo, your agent image, but here's let's collaborate, 18 matches, get started here. Clicking there takes them right into the Collab Center site to view it. So here are these 18 properties. They can come in and mark them as favorite, possible, rejected. They can leave the comments. So they can do all that there. It also gives them the link to download the Collab Center app and gives them the code that they need to connect to you. They don't create a password or have to log in. They just enter that code when they download the app, and then they're connected to you. And what the app looks like, my fake person, Ken Adams, is set up on the Collab Center. So I'll bring up the Collab Center app. So here's what the Collab Center app looks like. It looks just like the Collab Center, but it's an app on their phone. And so there's the last update. And they can come here and view it. They can tap on it to see the property details. And again, it's not agent information because below the public remarks, there's no agent remarks. And all they see here is your information, your contact information. And so they also, like I mentioned, can come here and do that near me search by clicking on that near me icon right here. And so even properties that don't match their search, they can come up here and move the map. Zoom out here a little bit. Zoom in here. Twin. and then the properties appear, and they can tap on a property, and they can view the information. And so they can view it on their phone. They can view the stuff from the search you've created for them on their app. They can view all that there. So that's the Collab Center app. And that's the email they would get. Questions about setting up a contact for the Collab Center. Now, let's say you're like, Chris, Paragon Connect isn't my favorite thing to do. Okay, so let's go back here to Paragon Classic or Paragon Professional. If I go here to Contacts and I go to View Manage Contacts, there's Fred Johnson that I just set up. So when you set up your contact in Paragon Classic or Professional, under Buyer Activity, there's that search I assigned to him, and this is where you turn on that Collab Center. And then here's the options for the notification times, immediately or recurring. And so you can see that as well here. And then there's the View Collab Center. There's the resend invitation if you need to resend them the link. Just like you could come here and where's that? Right here. The Invite Consumer app is resending the invitation. So you can do it either way. So that's the Collab Center for a buyer. Comments, questions about that? All right. So the other way you can use the Collab Center is for a seller. Sellers want to know what's going on with their property. And their listing agent typically is the one that provides them with that information. How many other comps are out there? How long properties are staying on the market? What neighboring properties are selling for? And so the Collab Center for sellers can give them all that information automatically without you having to go in and do it. Now, I'm not an agent. I work at the MLS, so of course I don't have any listings. So I'm going to log in here a different way, and then we'll look at the Collab Center for sellers. So I'm just going to use our subject property that we used in our Easy CMA here. If I can spell it right. Nope, don't need a space. All right, so just like the Collab Center for buyers, the first thing to do is you want to go in and add a contact. So add your seller. And the Collab Center for sellers isn't something that you can practice unless you have a listing. That's why I have to log in here differently. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to contacts and I'm going to add a new contact here. And I'm going to put the email address here. All right, so I got my seller information in there. I'm going to save it. As soon as I save it, it's taking me here to the contact record. And now instead of buyer activity, I would go to seller activity. And then I would need to assign the listing to the seller. So here's that property on Hillcrest Drive. I'm going to assign it. And then I could choose notifications for the seller and for myself if I wanted to. Unlike the Collab Center for buyers where you have all these options, for the sellers, daily goes out in the morning, weekly goes out on Thursdays. You don't get to pick the day or the time. This is how it works. So now that I've set that seller up, now you notice I got an error that it couldn't send the welcome email. That's because my fake person has opted out. I use the same person every time. So this is what you get when you have the seller set up. Now, we'll look at the sell side, the seller's Collab Center here in a minute, but this information is what can be seen. Here's the property information. There's the days on market, photos, documents, agent consumer views. Here's the graph of the property activity, favorite, possible, rejected, undecided, total saved searches that match the property, agent comments, buyer comments, shares via email. The shares via Facebook will always be 0 because we don't have that turned on in our MLS because if you're doing unsolicited marketing, you have to have permission from the agent. And since That would make it really easy to do that without permission. We don't have it turned on. But then they have this option here for the competition. And what that lets them see are listings that are nearby and what they're priced and selling at. Now, a lot of times people ask, what's the parameters to find these competitive listings? So if you click here on the more info, it tells you same number of beds, same number of bathrooms, plus or minus one. The square and for non-residential acreage and square footage, plus or minus 10%. But here's the subject property, and as I zoom in here, there are the neighboring properties. And if we scroll down, for example, here's this property on Addison, and it's active. There's its price. Here's one on Hillcrest Lane. It's active. Here's one over on Hillcrest Drive, and there's the sold price. So in Idaho, as a non-disclosure state, sellers don't have any way to find out what homes are selling for if agents don't provide it to them. And the sell side for the Collab Center lets you do that. And if I go back here to my contacts record and I click on Collaboration Center, this is what the Collab Center looks like for them. It looks very similar to the Collab Center for buyers, but now they go here to My Property and they see all those details we just talked about. So they can see all this information about what's going on with their property. They can see the competitive listings. And so it lets them know what's going on in the market around where their property is. And especially if it's a seller who isn't pricing the property competitively, they can see those neighboring properties and what they're selling for, instead of you having to send it to them all the time. It doesn't show the showings because the showings don't happen through Paragon. But it shows like the emails, the searches, and that stuff. Just doesn't have the showings. And so it's got that information there. And even if you don't send them the Collab Center link or set them up as a seller on the Collab Center and you just want to see the information, when you go back here to the dashboard and you have it set up that way as and you add the seller to it, when you go here to the listings section in Paragon Connect, there's this sell side tracker where you can come here and you can assign a listing to that tracker and you can see that same information even if you're not setting it up for the seller. So here you've got all this information about the property, undecided, rejected, views, emails, shares. And then if I go to insights, this is the information that looks very similar to the Collab Center for sellers. So it's just giving you a lot of good information about the property right at your fingertips. Now, the whole favorite, possible, rejected, that's only the Collab Center. That isn't Zillow, Realtor.com, or anywhere else. But you want to remember, if it's on the Collab Center, that's a consumer that told an agent, hey, I want to buy a house. Here's my criteria. Send me listings. Those aren't just random people who are casually looking online. These are people that have talked to an agent and said, email me listings. And so that's the listing insights that you can get from the listing section in Paragon Connect. Questions about the sell side of the Collab Center?
How did you get to the sell side tracker again?
So what you can do here is you just go to the listing section, and then there's the sell side tracker widget right here. Yep. And if you have more than one listing, you can actually come here to the widgets, and you can add another version of the sell side tracker. You can have it with 3 of them. And if you just want to switch it out, you can go here and track different listing, lets you assign another listing. Plus edit listing is here and all that kind of stuff. So, and in Paragon Classic, Paragon Pro, under the listings, they added this section talking about explore new maintenance. That's all information about how this input maintenance works in Paragon Connect. So it's got a lot more information that can be really useful for listing agents than just edit my listing. So, all right, let me get rid of Sally Seller here. So we need to first go here and unassign the listing. And then we are going to delete the contact. All right, so that is the sell side of the Collab Center. Questions, comments, concerns about any of the stuff that we have talked about this morning with the Easy CMA or the Collab Center, both for sellers and buyers? Any of that stuff? That's all I've got for you guys this morning then. So, I mean, the old one's not going away yet, but eventually it will. I mean, and the benefit of Connect is that it's the same that's on your phone. So a lot of the feedback that sometimes we hear about Connect is, I'm not used to it. I don't know how to use it. Okay, well, the answer to that question is easy. You use it. I mean, if you don't know how your new TV works, how do you figure that out? You use it. If you don't know how your new phone works, how do you figure that out? You use it. Paragon Connect's the same way. But for a lot of people, their phone, I mean, it's all depends on the person. But some people, their phone isn't a toy. It's a tool. They don't play on it. They don't do other things on it. And so they're not spending extra time on it. But you could come here on your computer, use Paragon Connect here, and you've got the same information that's in Paragon Classic, but now it's in the same format that's on your phone. So you're not trying to learn two separate systems. And like with newer agents, like in the Paragon Basic class, I always say if I was brand new, I would spend 80% of my time in Paragon Connect. Now, that doesn't mean to ignore Paragon Classic, Professional, whatever we're calling this. Because the thing is, agents that have been around a long time are using this. And so if you're not familiar with it, it's going to be a little more complicated. But if you go to a residential search, while the search may look a little different, it is the same criteria that's here. I mean, this is just 2 columns. That's 1 column, but it's the same information. And so whether it's, I mean, just like when things change formats that you use all the time. I mean, if you used Windows 3.1 back in the 90s and now you use Windows 11, it's still Windows. Or maybe you had an iMac that had Mac OS 9 and now you're using a, Mac OS High Sierra or whatever the current one is. It's different, but it's similar. The same things with Paragon Connect and Paragon Classic. And so, I mean, they don't have a date. It's not like in a year it's going to go away, but everything new is in Paragon Connect. I mean, just one other example. Last summer, we added the photo match search where you can upload a photo and see listings that have that item, like a covered patio or a fireplace. When I click on photo match, there's Paragon Connect. It's not going into Paragon Classic anymore. Everything's in Paragon Connect. So, there might come a time that the input maintenance for listings will only be in Paragon Connect. So even though you can search for properties and share them in Paragon Classic, entering them would only happen in Paragon Connect. So, I mean, again, that's not like happening soon, but it will eventually. And definitely, like we just looked at, there's definitely benefits to using Connect for the input and managing your listings because there's so much more information you can get. I mean, instead of you having to scour the MLS and get it yourself, it's putting it all right in front of your face. So, anyway. All right. Well, that's all I've got for you guys. Thanks for coming.